Okay, today I'm going to show you guys how to basically prep a new panel for paint and show you the process I go through. This is a Toyota factory fender for a Rav4. They come what they call E-coated, so it's basically pre-primed. And first thing I do is you want to sight the fender, meaning you want to look across it to see if there's any damage. You can look at it from here, but the best way I do it, and my advice, is to look across the panel and catch the light as it's coming down. So this one's in good shape and it's pretty much ready to go. Next thing you want to do is you want to clean the panel. This is a step I feel a lot of people forget and kind of don't do. And so if there's any grease or grime or whatnot, it's good to take it off at this point. So I'm going to be using a Costco rag. And these rags, I generally, when I'm prepping stuff, I use new rags because you don't want to use these when they're laundered. So first thing I do, even when I'm detailing and whatnot, is I tear off the tag. So they come with a little Kirkland tag, and I grab it right at the base and tear it off. So I'll clean it with alcohol, rubbing alcohol, which this is 70%. So you could use a spray bottle as well. So I'll put a little alcohol on there and I'll just clean the fender. You could use wax and grease remover as well, but this tends to work pretty good. You just don't know what's, somehow somebody's got a hold of this fender and there's some sort of contaminants on it. So I give it a good clean and then I'll set the rag to the side. And then I'm going to prep it today with a snap-on. It's what they call a palm sander, and it's these have different throws. This particular sander has what they call a 3/16 inch throw, and so it's like a prep orbit. The finer orbits are the 3/32. Those are made for more like detailing and whatnot. So that's what I'll be using. And as far as the grit, basically any paint manufacturer, whether it's Sikkens, DuPont, PPG, so on and so forth, they recommend using 400 grit. I would say most industry standard, most guys use 320. You could use either or. Today I'll be using 400. One of the things I consider when I prep a fender or prep any brand new panel is I try not to basically cut through as much as possible. So here we go. So I'm going to sand it, and this will be the first step, and then I'll take a gray Scotch-Brite. You can also use red Scotch-Brites. Gray Scotch-Brites equal about 500 to 600 grit. Reds equal 320 to 400. So generally they say with the prime part they use red. I prefer gray a little bit. I feel it's a little bit lighter on the surface, doesn't scuff it quite as hard. But I use either or depending on the situation. So here we go. I just try to follow these little panels within a panel. I try not to see these body lines here, the character lines. Try not to sand mainly on there because it'll cut through and basically create, burn it down to metal. And the more E-coat you can keep intact, the better. So there we go. Sometimes you're going to have to manipulate this a little bit and angle your sander and whatnot just to fit in some of these grooves. The main idea is just to really scuff it so it gives what they call a mechanical adhesion. In painting, there's two types of adhesions. There's mechanical mechanical and there's chemical as well. So main thing is we're given a tooth for the paint to stick to. And then I'll put what they call a primer sealer on this fender, and then I'll apply base coat to it and clear coat it. So once again, you just want to pretty much dull the surface, as you guys can kind of see, and then I'll go over it with the gray Scotch-Brite. I do it kind of multitude of ways. You can either use it dry or you can, use it wet as well in lieu of water. So what I like to do first is just kind of run over it dry, and then at the end, I like to run over it wet with water, and I'll show you guys how that goes. So I'm scuffing basically the edges of the panel, which get covered by, this will get covered by a flare, and then this gets covered by the bumper, so on and so forth. Technically, they say that if you don't technically need to sand the inside of your panels. They say anything that's e-coated, most paint manufacturers say that as long as you clean the insides very well, like say with wax and grease remover and waterborne cleaners and whatnot, that you don't have to scuff them. That the paint will stick directly to the unscuffed e-coat. So I like to double up my Scotch-Brite. I fold it in half, by the way. So I fold it in half, and sometimes I'll even use 2 Scotch-Brites and kind of hold them together. So I like to pretty much make sure I scuff these things thoroughly. I'm a big proponent on just being thorough with anything I do. Just my way of being in life, I guess. So, the more thorough you are, the better. I think it just pays off. Just try to make sure you do, each step once, and your checkbook will take care of itself. So I'll hit the lip here. I'll come around this side. I'll hit the lip here as well. And then, like I said, technically you could basically not even scuff this, and as long as it was clean, the paint manufacturers say that the sealer, as long as you seal it, the sealer will bite into the e-coat. I'll scuff the lip here, and I'll kind of fold my Scotch-Brite in half again, and I'll work the edge here where the headlight fits. Just kind of a little gap here. But essentially you're trying to deaden the paint, or deaden the e-coat to where it's no longer shiny. And that way, it'll ensure that the paint will stick. So in order to scuff the inside lip here, which gets covered by the hood, I'll turn the fender on its back a little bit. One little technique you guys can use is take a piece of cardboard, fold it in half, and set it on the fender, or on the stand, and that way it's almost impossible to damage the fender. Also, when I'm doing this and scuffing this, I'm doing it extremely light. I'm not putting a ton of pressure as far as downward pressure on the actual fender, because I don't want to damage the fender with the stand. Sometimes if you push too hard, you'll put indentations in these fenders. So So that's it. Looks pretty good. We'll go run over it one more time just to make sure. Okay, so this is essentially what it should look like. There are a few cut throughs to metal, but that's pretty standard. So next thing I can do, I can blow it off, and then I'll come back and I'll dunk my Scotch-Brite in water, and I'll basically I refer to as damp prep it. So hang on. So if you have access to air, oh, my phone's ringing. So if you have access to air, use air to blow it off. If not, it's not really a big deal. So my main thing is all the dry work's been done. I'll drop the Scotch-Brite in the water, and mainly I'll just damp prep it. And mainly what I'm after is to uniform it one more time with the Scotch-Brite. The thing I really like about using a damp Scotch-Brite versus a dry Scotch-Brite, or wet sanding versus dry sanding, is the fact that the water will constantly rinse out the Scotch-Brite, and then it's constantly sharp. So I feel like you get a little better scratch profile is what they call it with wet sanding, mainly because it cleans as it goes. So I'm not gonna use it super wet. I'm just gonna dunk it and kind of wring the majority of it out, and then I'm gonna damp prep it basically. You can really use a lot of water, and that's okay. I just don't, after years of doing it, I don't necessarily want a bunch of water on my feet. And if you prep and paint it for a while, you understand. It just, usually, back in the old days, everybody wet sanded, so you'd come home and your feet were soaked, unless you were, I guess, smart and wore boots. Waterproof boots. But anyway, so here you go. I'm just going to run over it one more time, and the reason I pretty much dry prep it first is because when you start wet prepping, you can't see as well. So really all I'm trying to do with wet prepping is just uniform it a little more, and then basically wash the dust out of the scratch as well. So you'll see when I'm all done, I'll dry it off, and I'll actually use the towel we initially used to clean the fender. Use that to dry it off, and oops, I guess I forgot to scuff the back lip here when I was dry prepping it, but that's all right. We can wet prep it. Like so. I'll redunk it, bring it out a little. And I would say I'm using just medium pressure. I'm not putting a ton of pressure and really getting heavy-handed with it. I'm just using medium pressure. I believe the Scotch-Brites I'm using are made by High Tech, and really the Scotch-Brites I prefer are the Merca Scotch-Brites, and then Norton makes a Scotch-Brite. I'm not a huge fan of the 3M Scotch-Brites. I feel like they're a little coarse, so I'm going to turn the fender and roll it on its back a little bit. Just catch that edge. And we'll wrap this up. So roll it back over. I have a sponge in here, which I prefer to use a microfiber, but which I will. So I'll take my microfiber, and microfibers, these are cheap Costco ones. This is what they call a double-sided microfiber. This is the high pile side, and that's the low pile side. These are very low pile in general, but it's the fluffier side. So I fold all my microfibers in fours, so in half, then in half again, and I'm using the high pile side, and then I'll just wipe the fender off basically. I am wearing gloves. I don't always prep with gloves, but I like to, just to, in case I have any contaminants on my hands, just to try to keep it off of what I'm sanding. But there's not, you can't always do it. Sometimes when you're block sanding and so on and so forth, it's a little more comfortable if you're not wearing gloves. So that's pretty much it. I love prepping with microfiber towels. They're great at picking up water, and since I do some detailing as well, that's probably your main staple of the detailer. So they dry things real well. So if you have access to air, which I do, I'll blow a little bit of light air on it to help dry it. And that's pretty much it. That's what it looks like. It's fully scuffed, has a pretty nice uniform scratch profile. Like I said, I like to basically use a Scotch-Brite wet with water just to clean all the dust out of it. So essentially, when I go in the booth with this, I'll wipe it down with a waterborne cleaner, alcohol, that kind of thing. Most paint lines have their waterborne cleaners, and then I'm going to wipe it down with a degreaser as well. So that's how you prep an E-coated fender, and she's ready to paint.